time for Lefties Losing It, and I regret to inform you that the Democrats have lost whatever tenuous grip they had on sanity. Watch this performance from Democrat Congressman Robert Garcia. He actually thought he was clever here, asking the CEO of taxpayer-funded PBS the following.
The American people want to know, is Elmo now, or has he ever been, a member of the Communist Party of the United States? A yes or no?
No.
But let's talk about somebody else. Let's talk about Cookie Monster. Now, we know that Health Secretary RFK Jr. is coming out against fast food and baked goods. Are we silencing pro-cookie voters? Yes or no? Ms. Karger.
But cookies are a sometime food.
Now, these two guys actually live together. They're friends. They're supportive of each other. Now, that might be triggering to our chairwoman and some on this committee, and perhaps that's also why we're here today. Ms. Karger, an important question. Are Bert and Ernie part of an extreme homosexual agenda?
So infantile because, yeah, PBS are never political, are they? Well, let's have a look at a show the taxpayer-funded PBS produced.
So, get your singing voices ready. And we're going to start with our hips. The hips on the drag queen go swish, 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 swish. The shoulders on the drag queen go shimmy, 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 blah, blah, blah.
Oh dear. But there was one lefty losing it even more than the Democrats, and some would say lying even more than the Democrats. And that was NPR CEO and hard left ideologue Catherine Maher.
Do you think that white people should pay reparations?
I've never said that, sir.
Yes, you did. You said it in January of 2020. You tweeted, yes, the North, yes, all of us, yes, America. Yes, our original collective sin and unpaid debt. Yes, reparations. Yes, on this day.
I don't believe that was a reference to fiscal reparations, sir.
What kind of reparations was it a reference to?
I think it was just a reference to the idea that we all owe much to the people who came before us.
That's a bizarre way to frame what you tweeted.
Oops, yes, her old tweets are coming back to haunt her. There are plenty of them. Maher's old tweets are a hot mess of far-left lunacy and racist emoting, a lot of anti-white racism, and then loopy stuff like this, like getting triggered with words like boys and girls. She posted, I do wish Hillary wouldn't use the language of boy and girl. It's a raising language for non-binary people. Goodness me. This is a woman who ran Wikipedia and helped ruin that site with leftist propaganda masquerading as facts before moving on to NPR. And today she struggled to answer straightforward questions and tried to justify her past hysterical fact-free statements like calling the president a fascist.
Let me ask you, why did you call President Trump a fascist and a deranged racist sociopath in 2020?
Congressman, I appreciate the opportunity to address this. I regret those tweets. I would not tweet them again today. They represented a time where I was reflecting on something that I believe that the president had said rather than who he is. I don't presume that anyone is a racist.
You don't believe anyone is a racist?
I don't start by presuming anyone is a racist.
Oh, she's on a roll now. Here she got some laughs when she claimed NPR wasn't biased and she knew nothing about the politics of her editorial staff, like the fact that 87 editorial positions are filled by registered Democrats in DC and 0 by Republicans.
Is NPR biased?
Congressman, I have never seen any instance of...
Never?
Of political bias determining editorial decisions, no.
It was 87 Democrats, 0 Republicans, and you say NPR is not biased.
And those old tweets kept coming back to haunt her. But don't worry, she has changed dramatically in the last 4 or 5 years, or half a decade, as she refers to call it. What a mess.
Do you believe that America is addicted to white supremacy?
I believe that I tweeted that, and as I've said earlier, I believe much of my thinking has evolved over the last half decade.
It has evolved. Why did you tweet that?
I don't recall the exact context, sir, so I wouldn't be able to say.
Okay. Do you believe that America believes in black plunder and white democracy?
I don't believe that, sir.
You tweeted that in reference to a book you were reading at the time, apparently, The Case for Reparations.
I don't think I've ever read that book, sir.
Catherine, you certainly did. You tweeted about it at length. You took a day off to just read the book. You posted, America begins in black plunder and white democracy. I appreciate the day off today to finally fully read The Case for Reparations. Now you claim you never read it, but you posted about it repeatedly. Okay, let's explore just how lunatic left this woman who ran Wikipedia and now NPR is. Thankfully, Brandon Gill has the receipts.
Do you believe that looting is morally wrong?
I believe that looting is illegal, and I refer to it as counterproductive. I think it should be prosecuted.
Do you believe it's morally wrong, though?
Of course.
You tweeted, it's hard to be mad about protests in reference to the BLM protests, not prioritizing the private property of a system of oppression. You didn't condemn the looting. You said that it was counterproductive. NPR also promoted a book called In Defense of Looting. Do you think that that's an appropriate use of taxpayer dollars?
I'm unfamiliar with that book, sir, and I don't believe that was at my time
You
at
tweeted
NPR.
that you read that book, but
I don't believe that I did read that.
Now let's go to the disaster that is Disney's Snow White. I can't imagine why people are not warming to this woke reimagining of a much-loved favourite. And they're not warming to its star Rachel Zegler either. Here she is before the election saying, if you don't intend to vote for Kamala, then you should unfollow her.
Vote for Kamala Harris. And it's actually non-negotiable. Our rights are on the line, folks. Our reproductive rights. Come on. Go vote blue. And if you disagree with this sentiment, just hit the unfollow button. I don't need your business. Thanks.
Okay, Rachel. Now listen to her promote the film.
The girl you remember, but she's definitely made for the modern age, and there's such an emphasis on what it really means to be the fairest of them all. And for Snow White, it's coming to terms with finding herself and finding her inner voice and finding a sense of agency so that she can be a just ruler.
And the reviews are in, and even the leftist publications can't put lipstick on this pig. This production is a train wreck. Let's go to some of these reviews. We've got this from The Independent. Lazy, visually repellent. Ouch. Exhaustingly awful and toe-curling terrible, said The Guardian. The most controversial Disney adult nightmare ever was from Rolling Stone. A strange hot mess, said the Huffington Post. And good enough for TV. That's the nicest you'll get from Vanity Fair. Now, you all remember Jussie Smollett? Well, we may have found the female version. A Pennsylvania city worker, Latasha Brown, has been charged with staging a fake hate crime after she allegedly planted a noose on her own desk.
Downtown Police Department conducted a thorough investigation, including interviews with persons, analysis of evidence, and consultation with the District Attorney's Office of Lehigh County. As a result of the subsequent investigation, Latasha Brown was charged with tampering with or fabricating physical evidence, a misdemeanor of the second degree, and false reports to law enforcement.
Seems like the demand for racism is outstripping the supply. Now let's go to Elon Musk's transgender son, who Teen Vogue has featured in their publication, just so this kid can blast his father and the Trump administration. Why else would they feature Vivian Jenner Wilson, a 20-year-old that's not really doing much and not exactly setting the world on fire, even with their social media output?
Give us some of your political beliefs.
Kill everyone now. Condone first-degree murder. Advocate cannibalism. Eat filth are my politics. Filth is my life. Take whatever you like.
And for being so brave and stunning and hating on her anti-woke dad and, of course, Trump, Vivian gets a Teen Vogue fluff piece complete with the star treatment.
I look like Ghostface.
Now to CNN with some sobering news about Donald Trump's popularity. If there are any lefties in the room, I'm giving you a trigger warning. This is going to hurt.
I think sometimes it's important to do a little bit of reality check and take a little different spin at the numbers. I'm going to do that right here because all we talk about is how unpopular Donald Trump is. But in reality, he's basically more popular than he was at any point in term number one and more popular than he was when he won election back in November of 2024. What are we talking about? His net favorable rating right now comes in at -4 points. Compare that to where he was when he won in November of 2024 when he was at -7 points, or March of 2017 when he was at -10 points. So when you compare Trump against himself, he's actually closer to the apex than he is to the bottom of the trough. And of course, that's so important because Donald Trump, historically speaking, has had his numbers underestimated. So I think it's very important to compare him to himself to understand he's actually more popular now than he was when he won.
So, despite the media hysteria and lies, Donald Trump is more popular now than when he won the election in a landslide. Remember, he won every swing state, he won the popular vote, he beat Kamala Harris 312 to 226 electoral college votes. It wasn't close, folks. And if there was an election today, those polls indicate he'd win with an even bigger margin. Let's bring in Newsweek senior editor-at-large and Article 3 Project senior counsel, Josh Hammer. Josh, that is incredible to see those numbers despite the hysteria we hear from the media relentlessly.
Yeah, and there's a number of reasons for that, Rita. So first of all, I mean, there's the old pithy maxim that goes back really as old as time that says that a man is defined not merely by his friends, but by his enemies. And Donald Trump has always had the benefit, really, since his entire political career started, but especially, it seems like, over the past 6 months to a year or so, he has the benefit of having world historically terrible enemies. I mean, just the utter calamity that was the Joe Biden clearly having the mental and physical decline, to Kamala Harris being the least popular candidate, frankly, just the simple worst presidential candidate, I would argue, in arguably all of American history there, to Democrats right now refusing to get off their bum during the State of the Union address to cheer for Peyton McNabb, this high school volleyball player who had her brain smashed in by a biological male there. I mean, Democrats are not just shooting themselves in the foot at this point, they're basically just shooting themselves in the torso. And Donald Trump, above all, is the number one beneficiary of that. And then you kind of couple that on the one hand with, on the other hand there, he's implementing a lot of very common sense policies. He is leading the way on 80-20 issues, 70-30 issues. I mean, the whole Mahmoud Khalil thing at Columbia University, this notion that this pro-Hamas sympathizer is not even a U.S. citizen. I mean, let the lefties complain about deporting him there. I'm sorry, this is probably actually a 90-10 issue, frankly, there. So I mean, he's taken the right side of these overwhelmingly popular issues there. The media obviously is trying to obfuscate. They're trying to blow all of the minor quibbles, such as the Signal group chat thing, out of proportion there. But he is in great shape with the American people. I'm not particularly surprised by it, frankly.
Now to a wonderful bit of news. Dr. Bhattacharya, he's already been vindicated years ago. Everything is said about COVID, the COVID measures turned out to be right. But 4 years ago, Josh, he was not only being defamed extensively, he was placed on a COVID blacklist on Twitter, having his very sensible advice censored and suppressed. Today, he has been a confirmed director of the NIH, the National Institute of Health. This is such a dramatic turnaround. What changes is he going to institute?
So first of all, Dr. Bhattacharya is a wonderful human being. I actually know him a bit in a personal capacity. Before I was senior editor at Large Newsweek, I was the opinion editor. I ran the op-ed section. We ran any number of op-eds from Dr. Bhattacharya. I would email him edits and so forth there. Very pleasant man, just a good human being who was severely mistreated by the powers that be, as you alluded to, during the COVID-19 pandemic. He was one of the heroes who came out charging with the Great Barrington Declaration early on the pandemic, basically calling into question all the lockdowns and the masking there. And as you correctly note, time has proven him completely correct there. So a good human being who's in a very important position there. I think among other things, I mean, related to what I was just talking about there, he is going to help put in place some very different procedures when it comes to future pandemics. I mean, look, we all know the pandemics happen. That's kind of just the way the human history has worked for thousands of years there. So among other things, he's definitely going to put in very different different practices, different habits. I mean, we're not going to have the forced lockdowns, obviously. We're not going to have the mandatory vaccines there or anything like that there. Frankly, Rita, I hope that the NIH, working probably with the CDC and potentially other agencies there, I'm not sure that we've actually gotten to the bottom of some of the fraud that, in my opinion, likely existed when it comes to the COVID-19 vaccine manufacturers themselves. So here in Florida, where I live, our governor, Ron DeSantis, initiated a statewide inquiry to this maybe about a year and a half ago or so. It came back fairly inconclusive there. I would like to see a federal inquiry into whether or not these vaccines have actually committed mass fraud on a national scale. That strikes me as one thing that could potentially be within Dr. Bhattacharya's bailiwick there. But from a public health perspective there is a need to get the American people back to believing in the public health authorities again. And frankly, you could do a heck of a lot worse than someone who's basically batted 1,000 and gotten it totally right over the past 5 years.
He put his reputation on the line. He put his professional standing on the line, and he was vindicated, but it was rough there for several years, the way he was treated by authorities, the way he was treated by segments of the media was frankly disgusting. Now, we've played already some clips of the NPR CEO floundering as she tried to answer questions about the extreme bias of the news organisation, a taxpayer-funded news organisation that has 87 editorial positions filled by registered Democrats in DC and 0 by Republicans.
In the DC area, editorial positions at NPR, he said he found 87 registered Democrats, 0 Republicans. Is that accurate?
We do not track the numbers or the voter registration.
October 2020, the New York Post had the Hunter Biden laptop story, and one of those editors, I guess one of those 87 Democrat editors, said this: we don't want to waste our time on stories that are not really stories. We don't want to waste the listeners' and readers' times on stories that are just pure distractions. Was that a pure distraction story?
Our current editorial leadership believes that that was a mistake, as do I.
Josh, that they think it's relevant now. When it actually mattered, when it was influencing an election result, they were pushing disinformation, trying to discredit that story.
Rita, it's completely inexcusable, like beyond inexcusable. I don't even know what the argument is, frankly, for the American taxpayer to subsidize NPR and PBS in the year 2025. It is insane. It is an anachronistic throwback to a bygone era, to an era where TV was frankly an up-and-coming technology, and it was competing back then with President Franklin Delano Roosevelt in the fireside chats, and maybe the government wanted to put a direct investment to try to stimulate the growth of public access television there. But whatever merit this argument may or may not have had 60, 70, 80 years ago or whatnot there, it has utterly and completely collapsed in today's day and age, where you have left-wing lunatics like this woman who are presiding over a taxpayer-funded agency there. You know, Uri Berliner, who left NPR last year, he subsequently has become closely involved with Barry Weiss's Free Press organization there. He has been very candid and forthright about what he saw behind the scenes there, and it is bad stuff. I mean, talk about monolithic ideological groupthink within the newsroom there. This is nothing other than a typical MSNBC style left-wing hack activist quote-unquote media organization. The only difference is that they get taxpayer dollars. That's a pretty important difference. Let's end that tomorrow, I said.
And I think Berliner came out and said he has spoken with the CEO about these issues, because I think she gave evidence there that she would have liked to have talked to him about some of his findings. So, yeah, her memory seems to be very sketchy indeed, and that's a fairly generous interpretation of what we heard today. What's the latest, Josh? You mentioned that security breach that saw the Atlantic's Josh Goldberg added to a group chat on Signal discussing airstrikes in Yemen. What more have we found out about that in the last 24 hours?
So we're still trying to figure out exactly how this happened, specifically how Jeffrey Goldberg got on the Signal chat. Now, Rita, there's multiple things going on here. There are some people that are having a meltdown because high-ranking officials were using Signal, the app itself there. I don't actually have a tremendous issue with that, to be honest with you. It was actually the Biden administration that basically installed Signal on government devices there. all else considered, Signal actually is among the more secure and encrypted messaging apps out there. So I think those people are frankly barking up the wrong tree. The question that I still am waiting to hear a cogent and coherent answer on is how a left-wing professional activist posing as a journalist like Jeffrey Goldberg somehow found his way into a group chat with people like Mike Waltz, J.D. Vance. It's obviously not a good look. I mean, we should not pretend like it is. It's obviously a terrible look. This could have gone horrifically wrong in about a million different ways there. In my opinion, what the administration should do is stop issuing it's kind of only semi-coherent crisis communications. You should basically just have a fall guy, figure out how this happened. Maybe he's a Mike Waltz staffer in the NSA's office. Make that guy the fall guy, fire him, vow to do better next time. And at that point, I think the story's over.
I think there needs to be some sort of accountability, because this is a stuff up. And you're right, Jeffrey Goldberg is a far left activist masquerading as a journalist and editor. He was pushed all sorts of disinformation, including the Fine People hoax, the Suckers and Losers hoax. There's a whole bunch of them going back several years. So for him to be the one who's inadvertently added to this list in particular is just wild. Now, let's go to a report from CBS into what is happening in Boston. Tom Homan, the Trump administration's border czar, accused authorities in Boston of releasing illegal immigrants charged with violent crimes, releasing them back into the community. And it turns out that CBS found plenty of examples of this. We've got just a few to mention here. We had a Guatemalan charged with 3 counts of aggravated child rape, released on $7,500 bail, Josh. Another man charged with aggravated child rape. The victim's age was 9 or below. Again, $7,500 bail. Others released with 0 bail, including a Honduran charged with assault, armed robbery, released on his own reconnaissance with 0 bail. So many other examples there. Someone charged with fentanyl trafficking, released on a $4,000 bond before ICE could even arrive. How many other cases are like this across the country where authorities are frustrating what ICE is trying to do, what the Trump administration is attempting to do, and releasing these dangerous people back into the community on small bond or no bond to continue with their criminality?
So first of all, let me point out that this is in Massachusetts, the Commonwealth of Massachusetts. You mentioned a fentanyl trafficker. This actually hits home on a very personal note. My cousin, may his memory be a blessing, actually overdosed and died from fentanyl in Massachusetts about 7 years ago. So this story actually hits pretty home for me, actually, that Massachusetts authorities are letting free actually the kind of people, in this case, the kind of illegal aliens, the likes of which tragically resulted in my cousin's overdose 7 years ago there. So this is just horrific stuff. Massachusetts is a Democrat-governed state. It's been a Democrat state for longer than I've been alive. I fear, Rita, that this is actually pretty common throughout the United States, especially in these far left jurisdictions, places like Massachusetts and California. I mean, Gavin Newsom's kind of sort of changing his tune a little bit there. No one should believe a darn thing the guy says, but you're still going to have some very far left holdouts like the city of Boston, like the city of Chicago, Illinois there. Fundamentally, as a matter of constitutional law, it is the United States federal government that has the duty to enforce the federal immigration laws. And the state governments are not allowed to undermine the enforcement of those immigration laws there. Now, they cannot necessarily be forced to do so, but you could actually offer some very clever carrot and stick. So, for instance, the Department of Justice under Pam Bondi can basically condition all federal funding of local police departments, because the federal government does subsidize a lot of local police departments. You can say, we're only going to give you that funding on the condition that you actively assist us with federal immigration enforcement. That's the kind of clever policymaking that I would like to see a little bit more of to try and put these so-called sanctuary jurisdictions back in their place.
Josh Hammer, thank you so much for your time tonight.